Hello and welcome to this week's edition of Income is the Outcome, where we believe it's not how much you earn, it's how much you keep. I'm your host, Kristen Oakley, and I'm joined by Tim Whistler. He is the founder and president of the Whistler Agency. We're so glad you're joining us. We are in the middle of a very special two-part, two-week episode series all on the Iron Curtain around your assets, which is estate planning. And if you missed last week's episode, don't worry, we're going to do a quick recap and review and then give you some more information on how you can make sure that your estate planning is done and done correctly. That's the most important thing of all, right, Tim?
It sure is.
Oh, good to be back with you. And you know, this topic, you and I have talked how hungry people are for this, right?
Yeah.
And so much so that you're actually planning some live events on this subject matter. Share with our viewers a little bit about that and where they can go to find more information.
Absolutely. So if you go to our website, which is simply www.thewhistleragency.com, you'll see that there's a menu of options available to you. If you look at the very top portion of the screen, there'll be an events tab there. So that way then you can go there just to kind of see whenever we're going to have another event in areas. And we're kind of spreading our workshops throughout Central Illinois. Mm-hmm. So we plan on providing these on a regular basis. So if you don't see a date on there, that's okay. You can also reach out to us and simply say, hey, let us know when the next event's going to be. Mm-hmm. Because to your point, people are looking for this.
Yeah.
And we've already done a couple of these already here in 2025, and they were very well received. So we're excited to get back out there as often as we can and provide this incredible content because it's truly helping families.
For sure. And you know, I love that you are coming at this from the angle of the TV show and live events. I mean, there's just so much to know, and we're trying to do our best to give kind of the highlight version, if you will, on this show, because there is so much to know. But let's do a quick recap of what we talked about last week. You know, we kicked off last week's show. We talked about how the studies show that 2 out of 3 Americans do not have estate planning in place. It's something that folks often don't want to think about, they procrastinate on, but yet everyone needs an estate plan. Why don't you review all the benefits to having this done correctly?
Absolutely. We'll just kind of list these right down. It allows you to maintain control. It allows you the opportunity to document your intentions. We cannot stress that enough. You are in charge. It's your stuff. You get to document your intentions. You have the ability to take advantage of some tax advantages, right? So we want to take the opportunity to have some tax advantage planning. It simplifies the process. And at the very end of the day, once you have all these in line, it provides you some incredible peace of mind.
Mm-hmm, for sure. There's so many benefits to having it done. And again, we said this last week, but I'm a firm believer, I know you are as well, that it's the most loving thing that you can do for those that you leave behind. Because when a person's grieving, that's not the time on top of everything else they want to have to wade through a nightmare and a mess that's been dumped in their laps. And the good news is it doesn't have to be as complicated as you might think. Let's review how the estate administration process works for folks, because I think that will really do a good job of setting up the other topics that we want to introduce today as part of this estate planning conversation.
Absolutely. So I think, guys, if you want to cue up that slide for us, we've got this slide that we shared in last week's episode. And by the way, too, make sure that when you're at our website, you have the opportunity to view all the different episodes that Kristen and I have done. So if you're tuning in today for the very first time and you're like, what did they talk about last week? Go to our website, you can watch that entire episode, because this is one of the slides that we shared where we kind of just really break down what we call the estate administration, right? How the law works when you pass your stuff down. So on the left-hand side, you see jointly owned assets. Mm-hmm. That might be a house, a car that you might jointly own with a spouse. And then you also have accounts where you name beneficiaries. What we're talking about there is maybe your traditional IRAs, your 401ks, your life insurance plans. Those assets then, as you can see, go directly to the heirs through what we call the operation of law. Then on the other side of the page, now we have everything else, all of your other assets, right? Your furniture, your jewelry, your collectibles, those types of things. And that's where it can usher in what we call going through the probate court. And the probate court, as you can see there on the screen, can generate some challenges that may not really be what we want to go through as we pass assets on down to our family through the estate administration process.
Yes, it's horribly expensive. There can be significant time delays, and it's a matter of public record, which means any Joe Blow can go down to the courthouse, pull up a copy of your will, see what you had, how much you had, who gets what, right? It gets very, very messy very quickly.
Yeah, and it's shocking to think about that because people really aren't nosy at all, are they?
Yeah.
So of course they're going to do that.
Human nature, unfortunately, right?
If it's public, they're going to go get their noses into that. So again, that may not be the optimal situation of how we want to plan in our estate.
And then the one other thing we definitely want to highlight, you know, it's interesting if we look at that chart, and, you know, lawyers always prefer the term assets, right? That's just a fancy term for your stuff, right? So as you see on that chart that we showed, all of your stuff can be broken down into one of two categories. But that category on the left, all of those jointly owned assets, accounts where you have a named beneficiary, whoever's listed on that category of stuff, that will always trump whatever a will says. And this is crucial because a lot of times folks are like, oh yeah, I have a will,
right.
But if they haven't updated their beneficiary designations or there's been a remarriage or whatnot, if you have someone else's name listed, it doesn't matter if the will says I want my current spouse to receive everything, whoever's name is listed on that account is who's going to receive that asset.
And that's an absolutely phenomenal point, because just like Kristen said, when we have those individual assets, you have a named beneficiary, it doesn't matter what you've done since that time. That's exactly what happens. It's etched in stone. So it's a great segue for us to understand the importance of doing a beneficiary review. You know, if you've not looked at your beneficiaries from your 401ks, your IRAs, maybe a life insurance policy that's decades old, it's just a good reminder to go ahead and take the time to do a beneficiary review, because just like Kristen said, whether you have a trust, a will, or neither, the beneficiaries are who's going to receive those dollars from those accounts where it does provide a named beneficiary for those different types of accounts and assets.
And I'm curious, because I know I've seen it in my own life that it's very common that beneficiary designations get out of date. How common is it when folks come in to meet with you that you're able to uncover, you know what, this is not what you want to have happen, right?
That's exactly right. In fact, you know, in the last episode where I shared that little story about where for about that 18-month period, I'm driving border to border and reviewing some things, it was amazing. The most common form that I used through all those reviews was the beneficiary change form. Good or bad,
right.
Somebody was being altered. Somebody was either being added, deleted, maybe because of divorce, maybe because of death, maybe because of the adoption of a grandchild or the birth of a child, whatever the case is.
Right.
Beneficiaries will always change. It's always a fluid process.
Yep.
So I think it's just so important that we understand that, and to know that if we have accounts that have named beneficiaries behind them, make sure they're up to date.
How often do you recommend that folks review not just the beneficiary designations, but let's say that they have a will, right?
Yeah.
And maybe it's been years since they've looked at it. How often do you recommend that folks review all of these different pieces of their estate plan?
You know, I think that's a great question. I think one of the first things that makes the most sense is if there's a life-changing event.
For sure.
I mean, you think in terms of, okay, here's mom and dad, and they've got 3 kids. The oldest just got married. Okay, that's fine. That's a little bit of alert. And then they have a child. Now here comes a grandchild. Okay, that can completely change the dynamic of how does mom and dad maybe want to leave the legacy, right? Because we talk in terms of whenever assets are earmarked for the beneficiaries, if there's a spouse involved, that's also a very, very specific detail we want to be very mindful of, because you can pass assets a couple different ways when there's a spouse involved. So I think a life event is a great time to review the beneficiary. And also think too, if it's been a couple of years, maybe it doesn't have to be every year we do this type of thing, but you know, I think within a span of 2 or 3, 4 years, it doesn't hurt just to go back and reflect, just again to provide some peace of mind knowing that, yep, everything is exactly the way we want it to be whenever that time frame comes.
For sure. Well, it's so important to be on top of it. As you said, life happens, life is always changing. You know, quick story from my own life. When I got married, I kept asking my husband, okay, do your parents have a plan in place for themselves? You know, because this is what I do, right? So it's very common for me to talk about it. Well, he said, yeah, no, I know they have a will. Well, fast forward, once I'd been in the family for a while, they, you know, were willing to share more information with me. And turns out that the will was written back in 1984. And it still said what was going to happen to my 4-year-old husband if something happened to them, right? So there were lots of updates and changes that need to be made. And so I know that that's a very common thing that a lot of people, you know, I'll get to that someday, but no, you have to keep on top of it, right?
We really do. It's a priority. Make it a priority. It's good for the family, right?
Yeah, for sure. Well, I know as we wrap up this segment, we're going to get to later on in the show talking about probate, the ins and outs of that, as well as what you need to understand about having a trust and what kind of trust might be right for you. But Tim, what do you want to leave our viewers with as they might just be tuning in and going, I need help. I need help reviewing all these things. I need to make sure things are up to date so that my wishes can be carried out. You
know, I think this is where it really boils down to, is just having the conversation. Let's sit down, let's have that get acquainted conversation where we are going to incorporate what do you want to do for your estate planning on top of all the income planning we're going to do for your retirement lifestyle. So just having that conversation with us is very eye-opening. It's very revealing. You know, it's not a situation where, you know, you need to be embarrassed or, yeah, we've been meaning to do this for all these years. You can hold those comments back, because it's not an environment where you're being judged. It's an environment where you're given the opportunity to say, okay, here's what we want to do with the assets to create the income you need, but then for the legacy plan you want to leave behind, what does that look like? And let's start uncovering the details for that and make that a critical part of the overall complementary written financial plan.
Wonderful. Tim, thank you so much. To our viewers at home, that number to call to start that conversation and to get your very own complimentary written financial plan is there for you on the bottom of your screen. Simply dial 888-992-7829. Or if you'd rather connect online, simply click that QR code and that will get you connected as well. Don't go anywhere. When we come back, Tim is going to be diving into the probate process, helping you understand what you need to know about that. And later on in the show, we'll get to trust. How do you go about deciding what could be right for you so that your wishes are carried out? Stay with us to find out right after this.
Writing a book was an idea that I came up with several years ago, but I never really engaged in the idea because I thought, it's too big of a task. Until about late 2022, I found the publisher that I thought would possibly be a good fit, and it has been. I'm really excited to introduce my book, which is entitled License to Spend, a retirement plan based upon income as opposed to ifcome. What I really wanted to do with the book was simply just try to connect with folks to meet them where they're at. They're about to embark upon a journey they've never encountered before. They're uncertain, it's a little bit overwhelming. So I thought, if I could put together just kind of a personalized book, just to hopefully maybe make that connection with somebody so that they maybe feel like we won't really have to do this by ourselves. We can engage with somebody who's already helped other people just like us, embark upon that journey, and just try to put it together in kind of an easy to read format, connect with them on their thoughts, their concerns, and just try to provide that resource that can kind of help address those ideas and share with them what they can expect whenever they come in and talk to us about that retirement income plan that they would like to have. With every conversation I have with folks, whether it's the first time we've met, whether it's the second time we've talked through the plan, or if we're going through our 10th annual review together, my hope is to be able just to provide some type of information and knowledge maybe they weren't aware of before. I hope to be able to create that takeaway where they're like, wow, I didn't really know that, but that makes sense. The publisher, when we were putting together the thoughts and putting together the plan on how we were going to extrapolate all these thoughts and ideas into this book, he said, one of the most important parts of the book is going to be getting, testimonials from some of your clients. And, I'd never asked my clients those questions before. I didn't really have any idea. I just knew that they liked the plan. We put the plan together and we review the plan on a regular basis. And man, when you get those testimonials back from people and you can see the impact that it had on their lives, it was unbelievable. And in fact, that's my favorite part of the book. It's incredibly powerful.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome. I'm Kristen Oakley here with Tim Whistler. We're so glad you're joining us today. If you're just tuning in, this episode is the second episode of a very special two-week series that we have been doing all about estate planning and what you need to know about it. And here's the reality, Tim. We've said this over and over again. We can't stress it enough. We know that estate planning has made out to be very complicated, that a lot of folks find it very overwhelming. That's why we want to have the conversation. We want to break it down. We want to make it simple so that folks take action, right? Because information without action is just entertainment.
That's all it is. And that's not really what we want to do with our assets that we want to leave behind. We worked hard, we saved hard, we sacrificed. Now we've got kids, grandkids involved. We want to kind of hand this off. We want to have a plan in place. We really don't want to just leave it at chance.
Right, as we say, willy-nilly, right?
Willy-nilly,
Not many other people use that phrase, but I know we both do, right?
Yeah.
Well, we've teed up that we need to talk about probate. And we've already shared briefly why probate can be problematic. Yeah. But I think we really need to help folks understand why just letting that happen and unfold is probably not the best thing. There's reasons why people want to avoid the probate process. So break that down for us. Help our viewers understand what they need to know about probate.
Absolutely. So that's basically when somebody passes away with a will, right? Because now they say, okay, here's my wishes. I've passed away. Here's my assets, here's how I want them distributed, and now basically you go to probate court. And here you show up at the court with a copy of the will, the court will stamp it, and they'll say, okay, this is our role now. Now we're gonna get involved. And just like Kristen said before, and we're gonna show a graphic here in just a second, it may not be the optimal way to go through the estate planning process, so we just wanna create some awareness of what does probate look like and what can we expect if that's what waits for us down the road. So if you guys want to go ahead and throw that slide up on the screen, thank you. There it is. So basically what it breaks down by saying is the fact that the assets are frozen. In other words, there has to be a specific time and place before they will release the assets according to the will. The second thing, we have to go through an attorney. We have to go through the court. The court is in charge, right? We have a will. We now go through the probate process, and they're saying, okay, we're going to do this. So now the heirs have to go through the probate process. And when they go through that, this is one thing I want to emphasize. A lot of times in a will, they'll name an executor. There might be, let's say, for example, there's a family of mom and dad and 3 siblings, right? The second of mom and dad has passed away. One of the 3 siblings has been named executor. Well, now the other 2 siblings feel like they're in the dark.
Right.
Because they're going through the probate process, and the executor's not in charge at all. The court is. So sometimes that can lead to a little bit of an animosity, which you can see there can be expensive and stressful.
Yep.
Right? It's expensive because you're really truly at the mercy of how long it will take the court process to go through it. It can truly be a long wait for distribution of assets. And just as Kristen and I shared last time, it's public. The nosy town crier will jump online or read the local newspaper and see what happens. So, these are just, the characteristics of understanding about what probate looks like. And I can think back to several years ago. We always like to understand. I wish I knew then what I know now. Right. Because just a quick story about my mailman. So back in the day, where we lived there in Morton, I had my office 7 blocks from my office. So it was a killer commute, right? It was just beautiful. So needless to say, I got to know my mailman pretty well, right? Saw him twice a day, right? Usually 5 days a week. Sometimes on Saturdays I'd see him as well. And ultimately he comes in one day and goes, by the way, what do you do here? So I kind of told him what we did. And he said, well, would you look at my stuff? I said, I'd be happy to, Steve. So he comes in, we go through the process, and ultimately after a period of conversation and period of time, he hired our services and we became his advisor. And he ultimately got to the point where he retired, and he got his dream car, a '65 Mustang, and just he was living life large. And then unfortunately, he contracted bladder cancer, and his life was taken. Wow. And I always knew about his 2 boys because I always heard about them through all of our conversations. He kept being very adamant about what he wanted to do. And so basically my whole point, Kristen, in sharing this is I met the 2 boys at the visitation. And I said, okay guys, here's my card. Your dad's got money for you. There's no hurry. You guys call me when you're ready to go, and we'll go through the process. And again, we were not as adamant then as we are today about estate planning. But unfortunately, or fortunately I should say, Steve did have a will, and the court system took the process over. Wow. And just to settle his house and his 2 cars, it went nearly 3 years. Wow. Go through the probate process. Wow. And of course, thankfully, his 2 boys were very close. They're still very close today. They're both clients of my practice as well. But just seeing that firsthand was very, very eye-opening of how long that probate process truly can be. Right. And that kind of blows that misconception that we've talked about all along in this conversation, how a lot of folks think, oh, I don't need an estate plan because I don't have that much, right? Right. With that, that was a modest amount, and look how long it took, and probably expensive for them as well. That's exactly right. And what triggers probate, it's different by each state. So for those of us who are watching this here in the state of Illinois, what will trigger probate is when the descendants' probate assets exceed $100,000. Okay. And any real estate owned entirely, not in joint tenancy, not through a transfer on death deed or trust, also requires the probate process. So right then and there, that trigger $100,000 or more, that'll trigger the probate process. So like to your point, well, we're not wealthy enough to have an estate plan. Yes, you are. And we definitely want to go through this because it's okay. Some people feel like the probate process is enough. That's fine. Just understanding what your family's going to go through whenever we go through the probate process, I think is just a fair thing to let them know because, again, you really have no control over it. Right. It's expensive. It's at their pace. They'll dictate, what's going to happen when it happens. And it's just, one of the things where we just try to create awareness for it. And just like we talked about in the last show, folks, I am not an estate planning attorney. Right? I'm simply the conduit of saying, look, this is part of a complementary written financial plan is to understand how do we want the legacy to be set up when we have assets involved. So if you don't have an estate planning attorney that you're looking for, we can certainly provide some guidance, maybe some help to how do we go out and connect with that estate planning attorney. What are the questions that we may want to have to interview and say, okay, this person's the right one or this person's the right one. Right. Because I remember when my wife and I went through that process, And his bedside manner was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before in my life. Ironically enough, his name is Tim as well. But I'm telling you what, Kristen, he just sat down and said, why do you want to do this? And what about this? And I just felt like I was being advised, counseled, not talked into something.
Right.
And I think that's the professional we're looking to have, especially when it comes to this critical element of our overall retirement income planning.
Right. Well, and that's what it should be, right? Because it's your wishes. There's no judgment. It's what you want to have happen. But then the right partner can come alongside and say, okay, well, if that's what you want to do, have you thought about this? Or if this is what you want to do, here's the best way to go about doing it, right? I mean, that's the kind of advising we're talking about.
That's exactly right.
Now, I know when we come back, we're going to be talking about solutions to avoid the probate process altogether. But in a previous, last week, we talked about the fact that there's so many celebrities who've died without a will. Shocking, but it happens real quick. What happens when someone dies without even a will?
So the legal term for that is dying intestate. So basically what that means is if you don't have a plan, they will create one for you. And basically what they'll do is you probably won't like what it says. You probably won't like who they select as your beneficiaries, and you probably won't like who they put in charge. So that's just so you have an idea of what that would look like if you pass away without a will. So again, it's one of the things where we just encourage you to look at your situation. Yeah, maybe it's been a little while since we've updated our will, or maybe we don't really have one, maybe we should get one. Just so you know, folks, of what you can expect with a will, with a trust, or without either one. That's all what we're trying to bring to awareness today.
For sure. We're trying to help eliminate unnecessary headaches, heartaches, strife. We want you to pass on a legacy of peace to your family, not strife, not infighting. And that can only happen when you have the right estate planning done in place. So we encourage you to reach out to Tim and the team of the Whistler Agency so that they can help and serve you. That number to call is 888-992-7829. Or again, you're welcome to scan that QR code and that will get you connected as well. When we come back, Tim is going to be sharing some solutions for how you can avoid the probate process altogether. Stay with us to find out how right after this.
Did you know the strategy you choose for claiming Social Security can make a big difference in your retirement income? Small differences in your filing approach can add up over time, affecting your financial future. It's not just about delaying benefits. It's about tailoring your decision to your financial goals, expected longevity, and income needs. The Bipartisan Budget Act of 2015 reshaped Social Security filing rules, eliminating popular strategies like file and suspend. Many retirees may not realize how these changes could affect their benefits. If it's been a while since you have reviewed your Social Security plan, now could be the perfect time to reassess. A customized Social Security analysis can help you navigate your options and create a strategy that works for you.
Welcome back to Income is the Outcome, where Tim and I have been continuing this important conversation all about getting your estate planning done and getting it done correctly. We just shared about the probate process, and clearly a lot of folks want to avoid it, and rightly so. So Tim, what is the solution? What are some of the tools that you're able to use to help your clients avoid having to go through that headache?
So one of the most popular tools is what they call the revocable living trust. Now, revocable is defined as being able to make a change. So think in terms of you have a bucket. It's a pretty big bucket. You control what goes into that and what comes out of that while you're alive, right? But once you have that living revocable trust in place, now whatever's in that bucket when you pass away, now the trust instantly becomes what they call irrevocable. No more changes. This is what it is. So in other words, the living revocable trust allows you to dictate who gets what, when they get it, right? It's basically, and we can make changes to it. In other words, it's not set in stone until after we've passed away. So it's just another great tool of saying, okay, you talk about peace of mind and having control of your assets and dictating the entire process. The living revocable trust is that answer. And
so how does someone, understand the benefits of if this is going to be the right fit for them?
I think we've got a slide here we're going to put up on the screen. I think it does a great job of just hitting some highlights of what this will do at a high level. So number one, unlike probate, your trust assets are not frozen, right? They are still available. They are inside that bucket that was owned by mom and dad, and now that becomes an irrevocable living trust that the kids now have access to, because now you can see the trustee is in charge, right? So the trustee is the one who dictates the process. Heirs, therefore, can avoid the probate process. They have the power over how payments are distributed because mom and dad said, hey, upon our passing, we want you to do this with the house. If we have a child who continues to need special needs, that verbiage is also included. So all those options are available. So as assets are being liquidated, the mom and dad who owned the trust and wrote the trust, they can put that verbiage into the trust as well. It also transitions right to a quicker distribution of assets. And the beautiful thing about it is it's entirely private. It stays within the family. It's not a public notice. The courts are not involved. You don't have to go out and hire an attorney. There's just basically a very simple guide that we can walk through and start to unfold and unpack exactly how mom and dad wanted those assets distributed upon their passing.
Wow, and so it just eliminates a lot of the guesswork, right? All the unknowns, and it can just pass a lot more seamlessly.
It is amazing because, again, when we talked on the last show, and I kind of shared just for a couple of minutes what I had the privilege of doing in about 18 months of my career, was sitting down with folks and helping them do exactly what we just saw here on the screen. And I was able to sit down with just 5 different families over that 18-month period of time. And I'm telling you, Kristen, how enlightening it was for them to not have to reach back out to me because they had no questions whatsoever.
Right.
And then even speaking with people today that I'm still in contact with through that process, where now all of a sudden mom or dad have passed away. Now I'm talking to the kids, and I hear it all the time. I'm so glad mom and dad did this for us. I mean, that just makes the hair on my neck stand up because that's a powerful statement because it may not be the most joyous thing to go through, but when we take the time to explore our options, do we want to go through probate? Do we want the kids to be in charge? And we put the process in front of us, we go through the plan, we make it a part of our overall retirement income plan. You talk about peace of mind and just eliminate a lot of unnecessary headaches. That is the answer right there. It's a powerful tool.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier. It's one of the most loving things that you can do, right?
Without question.
Real quick, I know we only have a minute left and there's so much more to get to, but if there's some other documents that folks need to pay attention to, right? Do you want to just list those quickly?
I sure do. So inside of that trust, you're going to have a medical directive that allows you to state your wishes regarding life-sustaining treatment. You want to have your healthcare power of attorney, you want to have your financial power of attorney, and your durable power of attorney. These give permission legally to people that you trust that can dictate those different types of events.
So again, those need to be buttoned up on top of everything else we've already talked about, right?
Sure do. That's exactly right.
Well, I am so excited for folks to get to connect with you and have you walk them through this process. If someone's watching going, wow, I learned something new today, or I am overwhelmed and I want some help, what would be your parting words of encouragement?
You know, I would say let's pick up the phone, let's have the conversation. Let's get to know each other. Let's figure out how do we incorporate an estate plan into your overall complimentary written financial plan for your retirement.
Tim, thank you so much. Again, that number to call is 888-992-7829. You don't have to go it alone. Tim and the team of the Whistler Agency are here to help and serve you. Be safe, be happy, be blessed, and we look forward to being back with you next time here on Income is the Outcome.